Alright, let's look at Substandard D. Describe the construction of the Erie Canal, the rise of New York City, and the development of the nation's infrastructure. That's three different things. The construction of the canal, the rise of New York City, and the development of the nation's infrastructure. So we're going to focus on lots, Erie Canal, and the nation's infrastructure. Erie Canal is technology and transportation improvements. New York City is economic development. There's the themes associated with these elements. So our first essential question was, why was the Erie Canal built? Okay, and in our last video, the War of 1812, one of the things we come to realize in fighting the War of 1812 was that we needed internal improvements. That there were problems with overland transportation in the West, and that revealed a need for an improvement in the nation's infrastructure. The biggest problem was civilian transportation and the shipment of goods and people from the eastern coast of the United States to the western part, over in the western Northwest Territory. That was very difficult, very expensive, very time consuming. So connecting this eastern seaboard, this Atlantic coast over here on the eastern side of the Appalachian Mountains with the other side was a big ordeal. Now, how do we do that? In other words, how do we connect the eastern part of the United States with the western part of the United States over here around the Mississippi and the Northwest Territory with this eastern part? Because what was blocking them from trading with one another, commerce and trade going on, and their movement across here to settle this area was this huge Appalachian mountain range here. And Thomas Jefferson knew this problem early off, and he knew that opening up the Mississippi River was vital and vitally important to uniting both sections, the eastern part of the United States with the western part of the United States, because he knew the value of the Mississippi River in this great river basin. That's why he moved in 1803 to purchase the port of New Orleans. Okay, so let's describe the construction of the Erie Canal first, because that's what it says. Describe the construction of the Erie Canal. The Erie Canal was, after it was completed, was 360 miles long, and it started at Albany, New York on the Hudson River, and it went all the way to Buffalo, New York on Lake Erie. So it's going to connect the Hudson River to Lake Erie, the Great Lakes. There are 36 locks. 36 locks were built, and each one of them was at a different elevation. So in these locks, as you go across the Erie Canal, you either had to be water had to be put in these locks to either lift your vessel up or lift it down, depending on the relationship between the water. So there's 36 different locks to change the elevations so your ship could go through there. And it's built between 1817 and 1825, and mostly immigrant labor was used to dig the canal, to fell trees, cut trees down, remove stumps, and relocate dirt. A lot of hard work going on there, and thousands are going to die in building the Erie Canal. Okay, so our essential question is, what was the significance of the construction of the Erie Canal? Alright, earlier we talked about, we needed to connect eastern part of the United States with western part of the United States, and a major problem with that was this daggum Appalachian mountain range, that had been this source of problems even since the Revolutionary period, when King George III said in his proclamation of 1763, don't colonize west of those mountains. So this is going to be a source of problems. So how does Erie Canal, why is it significant? It's a construction. Why is it significant? And we see here, if we look at this relief map, here's the Lake Erie here, and the Great Lakes are up here, and we see that here's the Atlantic Ocean in here, and there's Long Island, and there's Manhattan, and here's the Hudson River comes up in this area here all the way up to Albany. And then we notice that in this recession here is a little area going through here where we can go all the way over to Buffalo, New York, which is on the Erie Canal. So we see here in this little cutaway in the Appalachian Mountains that there's a place going up to Hudson, a little cutaway through the mountains there in a little valley area where we can go across and build a canal all the way over here to Buffalo, New York. So in this, from the Hudson to Buffalo, that's where we're going to build the Erie Canal, right through there. That's why the Erie Canal becomes important, because the Erie Canal is going to connect this body of water over here, the Atlantic Ocean, to this body of water over here, the Great Lakes area. That's why Erie Canal going up to Hudson, when we go up to Hudson from New York, and then we cut across here in the Appalachian Mountains, that's why Erie Canal becomes important. Alright, so the Erie Canal connects the Great Lakes area with the Atlantic Ocean and vice versa. Okay, Buffalo to Albany, New York, and then down to Hudson to New York City. So in our relief map, we saw that the importance of New York City is going to be increased. Here's the Hudson River going up here, and then across here's where the Erie Canal is going to be built, and then Buffalo is right there on the Erie. Alright, here's a map. Here's a map showing Buffalo, New York there. Here's Albany, New York over here. Okay. So we're going to connect the Atlantic Ocean with the Great Lakes. Now, New York City is going to become, is going to be affected by this. That's what we're going to talk about in the next section. It's about location, location, location. So the Atlantic Ocean and going up the Hudson is going to cause New York City on the Atlantic coast to be a very, very important location in international trade, and the trade between the eastern United States and the western United States, and even getting those goods from the western part of the country over to Europe. So the canal connected eastern United States to western United States provided for a faster route westward. And that's goods are going to, the price of goods going across there is going to cut it by 95%. And people are going to be able to go over and settle the Northwest Territory a lot faster. I think it was, let's see, Thomas Edison's dad owned a shop on the Erie Canal. A lot of that is going to move those people out in the Northwest. The Hudson River was used to connect to the Erie Canal, connect the Erie Canal to the Great Lakes and Atlantic Ocean. So there's big connections going on. Alright, so and then it says the rise of New York City. We talked about New York City being a location, and then here's why. Here's the city of New York. There's the Hudson going up. There's the Erie going to be cut across the Great Lakes. It's the terminal on the Atlantic to get into the interior of the United States and bring those goods back and forth if you're going to trade with Europe. So it becomes an international location. So New York City becomes this major interest point to the United States western markets, and the Hudson River from New York City was used to connect to the Erie Canal. So because goods going from western United States to Europe had to pass through New York City, many financial matters are going to take place in New York City, and any goods between the west going to Europe had to come through New York City. So what that's going to do is going to make New York City this great economic center, the center of trade and commerce between Europe and the western United States, a big banking and commercial area. A lot of banking and commercial activity is going to go on in New York City. So that's why New York City is going to rise as a city, and its importance is going to rise. Alright, so in the next one says, and the development of the nation's infrastructure. How did the building of Erie Canal improve the nation's infrastructure? And so the Erie Canal joined the east coast of the United States on the Atlantic Ocean to the Great Lakes region. It allowed people and goods to travel faster to the Northwest Territory, Great Lakes area. It's going to do more than that. We see that here. It's going to also connect the Great Lakes area to the Mississippi River Basin, and down out the Mississippi River. So the Atlantic Ocean and Mississippi River is going to be connected. And if we look at this, if we go from the Atlantic Ocean, go up the Hudson, go across there, to Buffalo on Lake Erie, and then go through Lake Huron and Michigan, get over to Chicago over here in this area here, Chicago, Illinois over here, the gateway to the west. And we see here that all of this is because of this geography. This opportunity through the Appalachian Mountains connects Atlantic Ocean to the Great Lakes. But if we look a little close, the Great Lakes are also connected to the Mississippi River down in this area where Thomas Jefferson knew would be important. So in that we see that trade can happen on the East Coast here through these rivers, and then up through New York City into the Great Lakes, and then down these rivers, major rivers, and its tributaries all into the west, all in this Mississippi River basin we talked about earlier, and then down out of New Orleans into the Gulf of Mexico around Florida. So what we're doing here is creating this network of transportation on these rivers and these canals. That's how the infrastructure or the transportation means throughout the United States is going to change. And in this, we're going to make a connection, unite the country, western part of the United States, with the eastern part of the United States. And as a symbolism, the wedding of the waters happens October 26, 1825. Governor DeWitt Clinton of New York is going to sail from Buffalo, New York on the Erie, Lake Erie, back to New York City. It's only going to take him 10 days, where it took a longer time than that, double that time to make it before. And he's going to ceremoniously pour water from Lake Erie into the New York harbor. And they refer to that as the wedding of the waters. And New York City is going to get the nickname the Empire State. And there in New York City today is one of the world's largest buildings is the Empire State Building. And here's a picture of it here. And eventually New York City is going to become this entrance point for immigrants coming from all over the world, and that's where Statue of Liberty is going to be located, there on Liberty Island. And a lot of immigrants are going to come in through Ellis Island and Liberty Island, and they're going to come to the United States. And New York City is going to become this bustling city with this great population, all because of this Erie Canal. So did we do what we set out to do? Did we describe the construction of the Erie Canal, the rise of New York City, and the development of the nation's infrastructure? I think we did. Watch this video as much as you want, but that's it. Good luck on the test.